Hey guys, Tightrope here, and in this video I'm going over a few of the biggest changes that impact gameplay going from Company of Heroes 2 to Company of Heroes 3. First up we have automatic vaulting. In Company of Heroes 1 there was no vaulting over fences and low walls. Company of Heroes 2 added vaulting. You had to manually click on the fence or wall that you wanted to jump over, and sometimes it was tricky to find the right spot with your cursor. The animation was also quite slow and your squad would be very clumped up, leaving them highly exposed to explosives. Company of Heroes 3 has added auto vaulting, so if jumping over that wall or fence is the fastest way forward, your squad will automatically do it. And the vaulting animation seems to be faster, combined with multiple models able to jump over the wall at the same time, making you less exposed to explosives. I think this is a great change, and it should allow map makers to add more of these types of obstacles to their maps without it being a major inconvenience to you as the player. There have also been big changes to squad spacing and formations. Here you can see a 6-man Grenadier in Company of Heroes 3 very spaced out, but in Company of Heroes 2 a 6-man squad is far more clumped up. So using the center of their heads as vertex points, I created a shape and then calculated the area. And in Company of Heroes 3, a 6-man squad took up 84,000 pixels, whereas in Company of Heroes 2, a 6-man squad took up 41,000 pixels, less than half the space. So in Company of Heroes 3, area of effect weaponry should do far less damage to squads that are out in the open because of this greater spacing. And in this demonstration, with a regular Sherman on the left, bulldozer on the right, the bulldozer fails to do a meaningful amount more damage to a spaced out squad, making these types of specialists less appealing than they were in Company of Heroes 2. The formations in Company of Heroes 2 are different as well. Here you can see two different styles of formation. We've got the V formation at the front for the Panzer Grenadiers, and now at the back we have the box formation for the infantry section. So typically the box formations seem to be as an advantage because your unit tends to stay more spread out. As you approach an enemy, you can kind of see that oftentimes two models are leading the charge at the same time, and this means that you're less likely to get focused down fast in a small arms firefight. So here's the disadvantage of the V formation. You have one man leading the charge at the front as they approach the enemy. So the whole enemy squad locks onto this man at the front, starts focusing that guy down, making him the first one to get wiped in a situation as you approach. So you start a firefight and you're one man down straight away, whereas with the box formation, maybe the damage gets split amongst 2 or 3 models, and means that, you know, as you're approaching the enemy, you tend to do much better in small arms firefights. And in Company of Heroes 3, it seems like most units are kind of using a variation of the box format. This 4-man squad does have 1 man leading the way, but 3-man Pyro squad, 2 men leading the way. 6-man squad seems to be pretty well spread out, almost with like 4 men leading the way. So it should make like closing the distance quite a lot easier in Company of Heroes 3. Run and gun, closing in, generally easier because you're not going to drop 1 or 2 models as you approach very, very rapidly. Your squad's going to be a bit more durable, so it's, yeah, big changes to the formations. So in Company of Heroes 2, units can get very clumped up behind cover, especially light cover. As we can see, you fit basically a whole 6-man squad behind this horse to take cover positions, so that's interesting. I think it's pretty similar. Maybe you can get slightly more clumped in Company of Heroes 2 than you can in Company of Heroes 3, but there's not a huge difference. What the main difference is that as you exit cover, in Company of Heroes 2 you tend to stay quite clumped for a very long time. Then kind of as you stop, the whole squad runs into position. So yeah, exiting cover in Company of Heroes 2 can be a bit risky because your squad stays so clumped up for such a long time, and that can make it difficult to avoid like flamethrowers. You don't want to be in cover against a flamethrower because when your unit's that clumped up, every single model in your squad will get hit by the flamethrower. But if you're spread out, maybe it'll only hit like 2 or 3 models. But you know, the flamethrower comes from this side, like, oh, I need to exit cover. You go to exit cover, but then you're still so clumped up, you're getting shot at the whole time and flamed the whole time as you're trying to fan out. So it's definitely a disadvantage in Company of Heroes 2, how long it takes to spread out as you exit cover. So in Company of Heroes 3 you can get similarly clumped up in Company of Heroes 2, maybe not quite to the same extent. But I think one of the big differences is as you exit cover, maybe it's more clean to do an exit from this heavy cover position. And boom, they start spreading out so fast. So that's a very welcome change. I think that's a great change, how quickly they fan out as they exit cover, making them less susceptible to getting wiped as they're exiting cover. But I do have some concern about being so spread out in the open. Maybe this is going to make it hard for some of those like more specialized, high AoE, low damage type weapons to actually get value because of these extreme amounts of spacing. And maybe if the spacing gets shortened up a bit, maybe the squad won't like spread out as they exit cover quite so rapidly. So yeah, I'm not sure what to do here, but there you go. One of the big new features in Company of Heroes 3 is auto reinforce. So when one of your squads completes its retreat back to base and it is not at full strength, it will automatically start reinforcing with no input required from you, the player. So this means you don't have to use the old way where you move your camera back to base, select everything, spam reinforce, and then move the camera back to what you actually want to be controlling. This frees you up to spend more time controlling your units, which I'm a big fan of. And if you want, you can disable this function, say if you want to start saving your manpower for an expensive unit. So overall, I'm very happy about auto reinforce being added to Company of Heroes 3. Another big change in Company of Heroes 3 is auto base building. When you have enough resources to construct your next tech or production building, you don't have to manually start construction on it with your engineers. Instead, you can simply double click on its icon and engineers will run out of your base structure and start production on it in a predetermined position. Base building hasn't been very important in the Company of Heroes series. Due to the victory point system, annihilation victories are extremely rare amongst opponents that are of similar skill level, and with how the economy works, you don't really need more than one of each production building. So I think this is a great way of simplifying things for newer players and keeping it even for all of the factions, unlike how it was in Company of Heroes 2. Now for this to be good, the auto placements have to be sensible, and there still is a benefit for manually planting your buildings close to the edge of your base since you can reinforce off them. The victory point tick rate has been adjusted for Company of Heroes 3, going from being updated every 4 seconds in the other two games to being updated every 3 seconds, essentially making the games 25% shorter. Now in practice, due to moments where no victory points are draining, for instance when both players hold one victory point and the final is neutralized, games will probably be 15 to 20% shorter on average. Now I do agree that games in Company of Heroes 2 did go on for a bit too long, but so far for me, games in Company of Heroes 3 have felt too short. I suppose it's a question of how you want to achieve the shorter match lengths. You could make changes to map design, making it easier to set up and maintain triple cap situations, and perhaps going to 5 victory points in the larger team modes like we briefly saw in Company of Heroes 2, or make changes to balance, making it easier to maintain a lead over your opponent than it was in Company of Heroes 2. In CO2, if you had a decent lead over your opponent and you got your medium tank out a couple minutes before they could, it often wouldn't matter that much. They could dig in with double anti-tank guns, and when combined with 3 or 4 mainline infantry squads that often had a sprint into a snare, it made it very difficult for the winning player to stretch their lead during this phase of the game. The developers have said they're open to changing this again in the future, so it's up to us to give it a fair trial in the context of this new game before ultimately passing judgment. There have also been some big changes to snares. When it comes to snares such as anti-tank grenades or Panzerfausts, in Company of Heroes 2, after the damage from the snare had been applied, if the targeted vehicle was at or below 75% health, it would result in engine damage. And that engine damage would be removed once you repaired the vehicle back up above 75% health. For mines, there is no health threshold, they will always result in engine damage, and you have to repair the vehicle back up to 100% health to remove the engine damage from a mine. In Company of Heroes 3, the snare has to bring the enemy vehicle to 50% health to result in engine damage. Above this health threshold, the snare will result in a 5-second slow instead. And in CO3, engine damage from both mines and snares gets removed when the vehicle reaches 90% health. So it will be very interesting to see how this temporary slowdown impacts the way players use their vehicles. A big change to vehicle play is the addition of side armor. When it comes to armor in Company of Heroes 1 and 2, tanks are split in half, with the front half having the front armor value and the rear half having the rear armor value. And at the medium tank level, the rear is roughly half the front. Company of Heroes 3 has added side armor, which was a heavily requested feature. Similar to the other games, at the medium tank level, the rear is roughly half of the front, but the side armor is usually lower than the midpoint between the front and the rear. Some units like the Stug G and the Sherman have high frontal armor but relatively poor side armor, whereas the Tiger has very high side armor, and that could actually be a bit of a problem. Doing some measuring, the Tiger came out to 193 pixels wide and 298 long, so that rear armor is actually quite a small target. And with Snares now providing a slow even if the target isn't low health, combined with the small target size of the rear armor, this could make effective flanks very difficult to execute. So I'm not that optimistic about side armor. I think it's going to add some fiddly micro trying to get your vehicle facing the right direction when pathfinding can already be a bit of a challenge in the Company of Heroes franchise. Or perhaps the front and rear zones could be extended, at least compared to what the in-game diagrams indicate. That's it guys, let me know in the comments what your favourite gameplay change is in Company of Heroes 3, and I'll see you in the next one.